In the family and social history section, I need to go over some important issues. It's going to assess marital status and satisfaction with that, and living arrangements, and substances in the current living situation, and how will these affect your needs for treatment and recovery. Do you have a daily routine that will gratify you and shield you from substances? Or will free time activities support and distract the patient from substance abuse? Maybe they're not that gratifying, but at least they're not going to expose the patient to substances. Or, no, they're not gratifying and they're not distracting, but at least they'll permit recovery. They're not going to sabotage the patient if the patient's sufficiently motivated, but then we have to look at the motivation questions. And the algorithm does that. Or, will the current living situation discourage or hinder treatment or recovery? Maybe the family is going to put the patient down. They're so angry and they're going to shame him or guilt her for what she's done during her active substance use. Or will they actually expose the patient to ongoing substance use right in the living situation? So you see what we have here is a gradient from the best possible situation to maybe the worst possible situation in the living environment as it relates to recovery. And we're not dealing with number ratings. We don't have to memorize anything. We can forget this tomorrow and still come back and read it and say, oh yeah, this makes total sense to me. Even the first time you see it. This is the first time some of you were seeing it. Does it make sense? Okay. So it's not researchy. It's not hard work. It's not learning a whole new thing. It's just what you know how to do, but maybe a little bit more refined. Okay. Now, at some point, we're going to assess the whole family situation and the social situation, number of friends, and we're going to talk about conflicts, current active conflicts with family, with other people not in the family, and specific people in your lifetime. And then we're going to get into the abuse sequence. Now, how many of you assess abuse in your programs? How many of you have specific questions in an intake questionnaire or intake checklist that you have to do for abuse? Okay, so it's not 100%, it's not consistent. There is a method to good abuse assessment, and here's the approach. You start with the least emotionally laden or stigmatizing question first. So you ask, have you been emotionally abused during the past 30 days? Emotionally abused. Yeah. My husband he's really nasty. He drinks too, and he just makes me feel horrible. Okay. Have you been physically abused? Well, yeah, a little bit. He's actually thrown me up against the wall. He's done that over the years a number of times. Have you been sexually abused? Not in the last 30 days. Okay. So, again, we have the color scheme, but the sequence is what's important, because the sequence starts with the least stigmatizing and upsetting question, and it allows time for the patient to see that you're not judgmental, you're supportive, and you're not put off by the answers. You're objective and you're available. And that allows the patient to open up and tell you the truth as you get into the more heavy-duty stuff. Okay? So even a novice counselor who themselves may have, uncertainties or issues, they're guided to do it the right way, right away the first time. Now, here's another form of questioning that is really kind of interesting. Have you recently neglected or abused family members? Now, the combination of neglected/abused is really important, because you might get an answer. A guy might say, well, my girlfriend might say I neglect her, yeah, maybe she would say that. And now you have a cue to bring in the girlfriend early in the treatment, especially in the treatment planning, and assess her. because there may be an abuse problem going on, okay? And you didn't provoke a complete rejection by the patient. You didn't get the patient feeling too anxious and building up a wall and keeping you out. He alluded to there may be an issue there because you allowed the question to be neglect, not just abuse. So this is a sophisticated way of exploration around abuse that can get you more information. And then the question is, did your neglect or abuse of your family, your girlfriend that you told me about, did it occur during your substance use? Yeah. Yeah. Now, this might even have happened during a blackout. And now we have a cue that we're going to have to see if we stabilize the drinking. Otherwise, there could be neglect or even abuse happening. And is it likely that family neglect or your neglect of your girlfriend or abuse could worsen without care? And we're not going to say at level 2. We're going to say if we don't have like a regular program for you like every day to get you started. And the patient at this point might be willing to acknowledge that risk because you've put him in touch with victimization of him and by him. And you've put it in the context. So he's now thinking, yeah, it only happens when I'm drinking. And we're trying to do this to assist the motivation and the engagement of the patient. So we're going to go through each of these questions in the sequence, preferably, unless the patient is giving us the material. And at the end, we're going to ask, how troubled or bothered have you been in the past 30 days by family problems or social problems? Now, these are two separate questions. But if my patient is understanding me fine and is staying with me, I can ask them together. And that'll speed up the assessment. So I'll get much more streamlined if I combine questions sometimes. But I do it based on my patient's capacities.